We're Phil and Judy Wegman, and we're going to talk with you today about our trip to the Holy Land. We've been there twice in 2019 and also just past June in 2022. I think the first thing I want to say about the Holy Land is people will say, well, why is it referred to that as it is? And so we say this: the Holy Land claims to be basically the scene of God's interaction with mankind. And it's a setting for the life and preaching of Jesus of Nazareth. And the entirety of the Holy Land is really a relic. And for that reason, it's called holy. Certain places are, you might say, are holier than others because that's where miracles took place or special preaching took place. And so, again, what we're going to do today in our presentation is kind of walk through some of the experiences we've had, some of the places, things we've seen, and we'll share all that with you.
The Holy Land is often referred to as the fifth gospel, because when you're actually there, you see all of the gospel and where things occurred, and it makes it so much more real. And so I found that as a point of reference that gave us a lot of insight about it. And you're asking about security. I'll give you my favorite security story. Well, we came in late at night on our flight. We were late and we got into Tel Aviv. It was dark. We couldn't see anything. So we drove 20, 30, 40 miles to the hotel and had really no idea where we were, what it looked like or anything. So we get up the next morning, we get on our bus to go out for our first day trip. And I look out the window, and there walking down the street was an Israeli woman dressed in full uniform, carrying her AK-15, her purse, and her cell phone, smoking a cigarette with glasses on, sunglasses. And that was like kind of synopsis of what that is like in that part of the world. They're very armed, always on alert, always in security. Women are full service people, as are the men. And it was just kind of, that was our hello to Israel. This is what life looks like.
The other thing we learned also from our guide was when the service is completed in the military, that AK-47 is sent home with the family. So almost every one of those family members has an AK-47 in the home. I mean, they are well armed to the teeth, I'd say. And they also have yearly, they have a practice with their guns. The guide said, there's a lot of shooting accidents in our country, unfortunately, but again, they send those weapons home. But one other thing about security, we wanted our family, my two sisters to join us and brother-in-laws, but everyone would say, oh no, that's too dangerous. It's too dangerous. I guess what we'd like to share with you is we found quite the opposite. The security is extremely tight. It is just tight as can be. I know we hear about all these incidents, terrorist attacks and such, but I can only tell you from our experience, it looks like a very, very safe, secure place where you can walk anytime at night. A lot of people would leave at night and visit some of the holy places from the hotel. Very, very safe. That's been my experience.
You might get bombed, but
No.
The rest of it's very safe. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so to get started, okay, on day one. To get started on day one, we visited the Church of the Nativity. Now, if you look at this picture, the first one to the left here, you'll see a small opening. It doesn't really look like a church at all, does it? Well, that small opening is the way you enter that door, enter that church. It used to have a much larger door, which you can see outlined here, but the Crusaders and others would ride their horses into the church. And so to stop that whole kind of behavior, they shortened the door. The door is only about 3 or 4 feet tall now. And it's
Excuse me, but the Zoom people can't see the screen. We're looking at a picture of you, not the screen.
Oh.
You need to,
Take us out.
there's a few, there's a few options on their screen, not yours.
Oh,
That they need to.
I can see it.
You can see it. Why can I not see it? I was just on a Zoom and I didn't have a problem.
I'm on a computer. I have no problem.
Phil,
I'm on my
Yes,
phone.
yes.
maybe here you
I'm
go.
on my phone.
In the upper right-hand corner of their screen is a little view option, and they need to switch that to be
Okay.
the full screen.
Okay. In the upper right-hand corner of your computer screen is a
Well,
view.
it's, I don't have any, I'm on my phone, so I don't have it on my,
Jonathan tells me the phone should do that as well. Something in the upper right-hand corner, it should be a view option. And if you could press full screen.
yeah, well, it's not up there. Let me see, meeting set. How about meeting settings? Would it be there?
Settings. Jonathan's looking at his phone right now. Let's see.
Yeah,
we-
because I have an iPhone, so if he,
it should work.
I would think it would work.
So you see us, but not that, not the
I
picture.
see you, I don't see the screen.
Okay, let's see. If we
And
can-
I've never had a problem with it before. Let's see.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stop you, but I just assumed everybody saw the same thing.
The other option you might have is you touch in the upper,
My menu is not in the upper anything. It's all on the bottom.
Oh,
Okay. Still trying to get there.
okay.
Alright.
We're still
he's
looking.
trying to figure out the answer to
We're
your
still
problem.
trying to get an answer for you. So hold tight.
No luck yet?
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Give us just a minute.
maybe we go on and
Shall we? Let's,
Can't get in.
he can't get in.
I'm
I'm using one account, you're using another one. Can't get in. I don't have a third account that I can get in on.
Oh, they
Oh.
can't see issue.
Jonathan said he doesn't, we have two accounts we're using right now. It looks like it requires a third account, which Jonathan said he can't get on right now to figure out how to.
Okay, well, that's okay. You guys go ahead and I'll just watch it on the playback because
Okay,
I'm
Okay.
gonna see
Well,
the
so-
presentation and stuff. So that's
Yeah, well,
fine.
well, maybe he'll flip through too. Wait and see.
Yeah, well, so sorry about that.
But that's
Well-
okay. Sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you guys. I just thought everybody couldn't see it.
Well, let me go back to this picture, the Church of the Nativity. So again, it has a very small opening here because when the larger opening was there, Crusaders would actually ride their horses in the church, and to prevent that, they made it a very, very small opening. You actually have to bend down to get in there. It's now referred to as a door of humility. After we entered the church, there was a lot of construction going on. The church and several others had been damaged by earthquakes, and repairs were going on. We entered through the side of the church and walked along the side hall and saw some very ornate Greek Orthodox altars, which you can see right here. You'll see again all of these the crucifixes and the various ornate paintings and so forth here. It's just really striking. There were all kinds of people there waiting to go in. There was an ornate painting of Mary with a silver hand, which you see me right here. Very, very ornate. It's called the Icon of Mary of Bethlehem. We were the third group in line and waited maybe 30, 45 minutes And we heard other groups were there for as long as 3 hours. So the very first time we were there were tons of people. I mean, the Holy Land is a place that is frequented by many, many, many people over the year. And so you have to kind of wait your time to go. The second time we were there, it was organized a little bit differently, and we could get in almost right away.
We were also one of the first
Oh,
trips that left from the US period to go to the Holy Land post-COVID on our second trip. And so we were very early in the process. In fact, the 9 days before we left, Israel was still making you test to enter. So we could have flew, but not got in. About 3 days before we actually took our flight, Israel had dropped the testing requirement. So at that point, we knew the trip would go on, or otherwise you could be held in a hotel until you go out free of COVID. So we were very fortunate. The other one thing that happened, which is very unique, while we were over there on our second trip, the US dropped testing to return. And so we were very blessed on both ends, able to get into the Israel and get out of Israel post-COVID in that COVID timeframe. So we were very blessed.
then, so in the Church Nativity, then you get to the entrance of the birthplace of Jesus. You go through a very small door and enter single file, almost like entering through a tunnel. You go down a very steep, uneven steps, and once down the steps to the left, you see the birthplace of Jesus in a very small opening and a 14-point star, which is right here. And that star is supposed to mark the location where Jesus was actually born. You have a few minutes to touch and pray, and you're encouraged to move right along because there's lots of other people. The space is very deep and narrow, and you have to kneel and make a big stretch to touch the star. And across the walkway is a manger scene, which is right over here. Again, this is in a cave. We hear about Jesus being born in a stables. Well, it was a stables, but it was a cave where animals were kept.
The first time we were there, it was very crowded. You could hardly move. But because of the second trip when we went back and the COVID restrictions, we could actually go in, have time to worship and visit. And we got to do something that was probably never ever going to happen again, is that we got to sing Silent Night in the cave, because it's a fairly large cave area, and we could get in there, and it was enough for the 48 of us that were traveling together. And so we sang Silent Night at the place of the birth of Jesus. And this is so unique to be able to have done. Mosaic, which is interesting. We were talking about that it had the earthquake and there was a lot of construction going on. This mosaic they found recently. It had been plastered over by some group to save it from some other raiding country. And it had been hidden behind this plaster for thousands of years. They don't know exactly when it was made, but they're thinking somewhere about 100 years after Christ is when they were made. And there is more of them, there's mosaics on the outer side of these walls that they're now opening up and finding. But it's just the Holy Land has been raided and taken and burned and chopped, and all kinds of things have happened, and buildings are on top of buildings over these 2,000 years. But this is something that they just found after the earthquake and cracked the plaster.
We next visited, ascended down these long, narrow stairs into this cave area, into what was known as the tomb of Saint Jerome. And Saint Jerome is the one who translated the Bible to Latin. There's a small chapel there where we celebrated Mass. The 40 of us could barely fit in. And back up the stairs is a large bronze picture, which is
let me go back that next. The stairs that we're going down here is the stairs that is down into the cave levels again. It's under the ground. And these are apparently original stairs, they believe, or close to it, at the time of Herod. when Herod had the young children, the newborn men killed, the bodies of the innocent were taken to the bottom of this cave. And there are bones there that they can date back to Herod's time. And so we're talking like going down deep into history as well. It's overwhelming to think how many thousands of years, these 2,000 years, that this has been there. And it's there and you can see it.
Back up the stairs is a large bronze picture called the Call of David. And also there was a large statue of St. George on the horse. St. George is a patron saint of the Christians in the Holy Land. We followed then our guide down some, again, we talk about a lot of narrow steps, but we followed the guide down some more narrow steps. And all along the way, there were, we say, peddlers or salespeople just trying to sell you different things that they had created or had for sale. I mean, they were pitching their wares, $5 for this, $2 for this. I mean, it was a strange experience in a way. We didn't expect that. I mean, a lot of things we didn't expect. The masses of people, all the sales type people, the locals there trying to sell us things. But we came down these steps into a small grotto called the Grotto of Milk. The story is told that Mary, the Blessed Virgin Mary, breastfed Jesus and had a drop of milk fall on the limestone of this cave, where you can see it's wider than other places in the area. There's also a statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary feeding Jesus. And the story is that the cave has some healing power. And at this site, you can also see a beautiful picture of the Holy Family on the donkey or in the stables. And there's an adoration chapel there, a very large gold circle, which is right there. We're going to switch back and forth on some of these pictures because they're a little bit, some of them aren't quite in order.
Okay, change.
Okay.
After we left this area, we then went to the shepherd's field. And the shepherd's field, we all hear about the shepherds came from the fields to adore Jesus. The shepherd field is an area that's a green space and is believed to be the original space where the shepherds did keep their sheep. And in this round, large dome church, there are some phenomenal artworks. The artworks of the Holy Land are phenomenal. As an example, look how beautiful this artwork is. And you're always surprised by which corner or turn you'll take to find a mosaic, an artwork, or something just that are phenomenal. After we left this little church, the dome church of the shepherds, we went around on the backside, and there is a cave, kind of like a shelf cave, like you see in Missouri. But in the shelf cave is where the sheep would go. And the shepherds would put the sheep in there in the night to keep them from running away or for having animals or people steal them. And these caves have been there for centuries. And they're very darkened by smoke off of torches and lanterns and the like. But they're sometimes still used if somebody is in the area and they bring their sheep in. But we're talking in the middle of Jerusalem. There's this green space for the shepherd's field, and it's quite unique.
Just a comment about this, you can see in this one painting right here, which was on the inside of this church, you can see the idea that, we always think of, again, Jesus being born in the stables. Well, this is the stables, but you can see the cave structure that is depicted here. I might add one other thing. All these holy sites we're talking about were kept holy by building churches over them. So everything that you're going to go to see, all these special places, with a few exceptions, have churches built over them. So we'll see as we go. Okay. Next was the Church of the Dominion. Let's see. And in this church, Mary is portrayed in a maroon wooden casket laying in the lower level of the church. There are many beautiful mosaics in the church. And we next went to the upper room.
The upper room is in the older part of Jerusalem. And again, you walk through narrow streets, lots of people, a lot of peddlers, and you wind your way up. And the upper room is to believe that is the room in which Jesus had the Last Supper. And it is a plain room. There's no furniture in it. And that it's mostly made out of arches that hold it up. Some of the arches, what you see, look younger, some are older. If we look at the one that's whiter, that's one of the older arch that's still there from the original. And if you look far in the corner, there's one on this picture here. They're little skinny looking birds. And those were birds they think came from the original carvings that were there. Again, we're talking about walking back in history.
Mhm.
And all of what you think about over the years of the Last Supper and what went on. It's a very hot space. There are no windows. It's just a door in and a door out. And when we were there in June, it was probably 100 or 110 degrees in that. It was horribly
It
hot.
was stifling hot.
You could hardly breathe. It was that tight.
The interesting thing about this structure is it's owned by the Muslims. Now, I should add one other thing. Holy Land is a sacred place for not only Christians, but Muslims and Jews as well. So this particular structure is owned by the Muslims. Fortunately, the Christians are allowed to visit, and there's no issue there.
And then right outside it, it was one of the most holy places for the Jewish religion.
Mhm.
And so it's very segmented. You can go from one building that would be a Christian building, the next one's a Muslim, or the next one maybe Jewish, or some other type of things. And it's a very chopped up who owns what. And it's very powerful and sacred ground, and everybody wants their peace. That's part of why all the fighting goes on in that area.
Give me just a second here. The next we visited a church called the Church of St. Peter and Galilee. It has metal doors that are huge with colored in a picture of Jesus and Peter. There are many beautiful mosaics and a great cross-shaped window at the top. The church was built over the place where Peter denied Christ. It is also the site of Caiaphas's palace where Jesus was brought for trial. We went down multiple steps to a large open pit area, and this is where it's believed Christ was held in the stone pit, which is much like a jail prisoner, which is used prior to his crucifixion. You leave the jail pit area with a great feeling of awe and a new knowledge of Christ's suffering. Next, you come to a patio area. You see these stone steps right here.
These are the steps that Jesus would have walked on Good Friday. When it went from when he was walking to and from the church to be sentenced by Pilate and back and forth. And they figured that he took this route 5 different times on these steps. These steps had been open and available to walk on, but within the last few years, an American fell walking it, because you can see they're not real stable looking, fell and is suing the religious organization that owns that little section of property for $2 million. Well, it's a small little religious organization that has almost no money. And so I think it will be in court forever. But what they had to do then was close off the walk. But the whole area, when you look at this, you go back and you say, wow, we're walking these same steps or the same areas that Christ had walked.
Day 2, the morning we packed up our luggage and we moved to an area called Caesarea Maritima. This is a coastal ancient city on the Mediterranean Sea, about 60 miles from Jerusalem. It's a very pretty seaside area. The Mediterranean Sea has turquoise colored water. It was a Roman major seaport constructed by Herod around 22 and 10 and between 22 and 10 BC, and was designed to have a European look in a Roman city. We arrived and watched a movie about the history of the area and how it was a major city in that region, named after Caesar Augustus. After the movie, we walked to the Roman amphitheater, which is kind of an interesting place. The theater today is used for concerts, and it's due to the sound quality. Something about the sound quality that you don't need to use any microphones or any sound system, because the sound is so excellent there.
Like our guide could talk to us with no sound system.
Right.
Yeah, we're in the outside. And it's just that way it's been designed. Also to comment that this is a very beautiful area. And there are mosaics that go all the way down out to the ocean because the water's higher than it was. So you can see mosaic tiles that go out. It's one of probably the beginning of the first flushing toilets. The Romans had set this up when they were building it, that they would leave spaces in this one area, spaces in between the rocks. So that if you wanted to go to the bathroom, they could sit between the rocks, and the Mediterranean water would come up and rinse it out and take it back out to sea. And it's like, so we figured that was probably the first flushing toilets we've ever seen in history. It's a beautiful, beautiful area.
We're up early the next day, after a full day of sightseeing to learn about Nazareth. And we went, the next step was the Cana area, where we, as part of the whole pilgrimage, were able to renew our wedding vows. At the chapel, we had mass. It was a very simple and well kept. It was great to review our vows. It was, again, it's where the first, Christ's first miracle, changing of water to wine, occurred. In that area, there were also some large, what they thought were the large stone jugs where the water was kept.
Probably similar to.
I mean, we saw that. I mean, things have changed so much over the years, and they saying, we think this is where this happened, and we think these were the kinds of stone containers that were used at the time of the miracle at Cana in Galilee.
This is just a sample of walking there. This is cobblestone streets. It's very small. It's very tight. This right now we happen to have an open space. We can see going down the stairs. It's challenging there with walking and stuff. It's got to be in fairly decent shape to be able to do it. The next trip we took was one we had not anticipated that was added on to our trip. And we went to Caesar Philippi. Caesar Philippi is a far northern part of Israel. And I took my phone and looked to see as we were driving along, where are we? Well, as I looked at where we were a very short distance from the Syria border on one side and the Lebanese bought a property on the other side. We were just a sliver going straight up. Well, we were also going through the Golan Heights. So we all know that's a high area of military action. And as we're thinking about, well, this is kind of scary in a way, but we're on for the trip. So we're going up through there. And as I'm looking out the window of the bus, look at these tanks. They're just parked along the road in different spots so that any moment Israel is ready to go to war with either Syria or whomever they're going to have the war with. This Caesar Philippi, they can date that archaeological ruins there can go back to the time of Herod's son, so about 2 BC. And so we're going way back into history. Where we are here, up a little higher, is where the Jordan River comes out of this heavy rock area. And what we're seeing, this is the beginning of the Jordan River going downstream. So it's a major source of water, and that's why they fight for it so much. And it's also very fertile ground with lots of date trees, olive trees, nut trees, fruits, vegetables, and it's all irrigated out of the river. So that's why that's such a hot area for battle and control, is between the water source and the quality of the land. You think this is a very peaceful place, but if you walk over about 10 foot, you're going to find a sign saying landmines, do not enter. And we saw this frequently. There's a lot of landmines in these areas that have not been found. They keep you on your path because of that.
Just a comment about the whole area of Israel. It's a very dry, arid area, but what we're seeing in the last two trips we were there, they're using a lot of irrigation. There's a lot of green areas. You kind of think of Western Kansas in some ways, where you see a green circle and you see everything growing. Well, Israel's kind of the same way, but water is precious, very, very precious there because it is such a dry, arid climate. Let's see where we are here. Okay. The next area that we went to was Mount Tabor. Mount Tabor is again a mountain area, and let's see.
That's the church that's the entry into
Okay.
Mount Tabor.
So this is the entrance into Mount Tabor. This is at the very top of this mountain, mind you. And it's a very beautiful area. You see these trees in this pathway, which leads to the church that they built there on the top of Mount Tabor, which is right here, with this church right here. And it was
It's very steep. They took the bus up as far as they could take the bus. Then we get off the bus, and then we get on 13 passenger little vans and zip on up. And it's just like back, and it's very, very tight, very narrow road to get up to the top. But the view and stuff is phenomenal.
I mean, you think about what it must have been like in the time of Christ, and the journey up to the Mount Tabor had to be very arduous and take a long time. But Mount Tabor is where it's believed Jesus took Peter, James, and John to that high mountain, and where he was transfigured before them. So it's a very sacred place. And again, the church was built there. They think, I mean, churches have been built upon church. As the church is built, it's destroyed and rebuilt, depending on what religious sect would come through, whether it's a Muslim or whatever raiding force went through. This particular church was built around 1920. And from the outside patio, you can see for many, many miles looking down. It took us a while to get back to the bus and get back down. And it was beautiful, again, looking down as you descended the area as well.
And this is the next day. We are now at the Church of the Annunciation, where the angel came to Mary and said that you will be the mother of Christ, and she agreed. We're now about 5-6 layers below street level now. We're deep down in a cave, and where the white picture part where the altar is there is about where they think that Angel Gabriel came to Mary. The one next to it on the side is believed to be the living area of their family, and that it's got, and this would be in the caves, a small amount of spaces that they should be what would be their bedrooms at the time. And like I said, we're about 5, 6, maybe at least 50, 60 feet below street level.
But
they lived in the caves, so this is part of it. Now, what it looked like at that time, who knows? But it's definitely unique, and this is where they lived, and this would be their living quarters.
In
the rocks.
visiting the Holy Land, I'd say a person needs to be careful. I think they should probably have a walking program before you go there, because you do a lot of walking, you climb a lot of steps. There were people there in our group who were older, like we were, but some had some handicaps as well, but they could make it. But it was, you had to be careful, especially on the stairs going up and down. Here, this is actually a picture close to the Mount of the Beatitudes. There is anyone, if you're familiar with the Beatitudes, is where it's told that Jesus first told others about what the Beatitudes, the blessed are the poor in spirit, and so forth. At this particular occasion, very beautiful green area, and with a lot of beautiful trees and grasses and so forth. It was really, really nice to be there. The next stop was Tabitha, also known as Heptagon, which is a Greek Aramaic name that is used to refer to the 7 springs. In front of this particular altar is a mosaic tiles showing the fish and the loaves. I don't know, it's pretty hard to see that. In the very front part of that.
We're right under here. Tell them why we're telling them.
Well, we're telling you about that because a few years ago, there's a group from India who it used to be when you would go there, you actually could touch those tiles. You could actually, and a lot of times, you'll want to, I think a lot of times people want to do is touch the path where Jesus walked or touch the, a relic that was there. Well, there's a group from India that was there and they were trying to pry up the tiles for some reason. I mean, take something back with them. I think that, like they say, even in the Grand Canyon, do not remove any rocks or anything. Well, apparently I'm trying to do that. So now that area is off limits. You can't go there any longer because some of those tiles indeed were loose and could come undone.
This church is right next to the Sea of Galilee.
Well, and then also
This is
following
lunch.
this is lunch. Lunch. It's interesting how they serve lunch, but this is the full fish, full head, and everything. You had a choice of whether you had more of a fillet type fish or whole fish like this, and we chose. We said, well, we've never had a fish with a head on before, so we did, and it was very, very good.
It was very delicious.
Very delicious.
And this is pretty good. We get the impression when they talk about Jesus prepared the fish. This is probably how the fish was prepared. It's kind of the old style fish purvey. Meals there, you don't go to Israel to eat.
Oh yeah.
It's not fine dining. It's a lot of cabbage, carrots, turnips, some fresh fruits and some fresh vegetables, not many leafy things. But that's their Mediterranean side of the diet. Our Mediterranean side of the diet doesn't look anything like theirs does, but it's very interesting and not a lot of food varieties. It's a lot, you don't go for fine dining and great food. Now go ahead.
Well, my favorite joke was, well, just another salad for breakfast,
But it's usually coleslaw.
It was.
wasn't lettuce.
It was like, it was again strange. It was strange how they eat, but anyway, it's different than here. And of course, a lot of lamb. Very little beef. Very, very little beef.
Well, I'm curious, how do you eat that fish? On the bone?
Carefully.
Yeah.
You just take your fork and have to flay off parts of it as you want to get to the fish part.
And you have to watch for bones.
Lots of bones.
Lots of bones.
They're kind of, these are similar to a red snapper type of fish. They're tasty.
Mhm.
Okay. We got to go out on, we spent about an hour on the Sea of Galilee. And this boat is the ones that we went out on. And they're pretty close, they say, to what boats would have looked like at that time. Now they're tourists where they used to be for fishing. It's the Sea of Galilee is beautiful and it's very pretty. But, as you read the Bible, you talk about a storm came up rapidly. If you look, and this picture on here, there's a storm starting up. And they'll come up very quickly and then they'll kind of peacefully go away or get worse. But it was interesting because you hear that in the readings and a storm appeared. We were shocked that storm came up that quick. So it's interesting to see that from what we learn and what we read. But it was a fun day out on the boat for that hour. We enjoyed it greatly.
And see, the boat's named the Promised Land. So it's
kind of felt uncertain if we would get off them either. And here I collected some water from the Sea of Galilee. You can take that back with you if you wanted to, put it in your suitcase, and that's not a problem to take back.
Yeah. What we see here is part of the original temple, we believe that Jesus preached at. It's, it's more of it's just a few walls and a few columns that are standing at this point in time. But you can see, taking a look at those, how it was built, those really huge stones. But again, so many of these things, the synagogues and such, have been torn down, rebuilt, torn down again and rebuilt. And that's what's true about the wall that circles all of the old city of Jerusalem. It's been destroyed and rebuilt numerous times, but you kind of get a feel for, again, the stones and how it was built and how large those stones are.
Okay, we're now in Jericho. Jericho, in my mind, was a very dirty, ugly city. I mean, it's nowhere. There's a little green space as you see in here, but it's a very arid, dry, ugly area. You can see there's produce being sold there on the street, and you can see it's mostly cauliflower, tomatoes, and cabbage. Cabbage is huge there because it grows fast and grows well. The dinner that we're seeing was a chicken, rice, vegetable combination. They cooked it in that large pot, and then they turned it upside down to serve it. So it's like a upside down pineapple cake, but it was okay, but it wasn't one of the greatest meals in my life, but it was interesting to have eaten it. Jericho, they're still looking for the walls of Jericho. They still have archaeological digs going on. And at times they think they've gotten close to finding it, and then the carbon dating doesn't take it back as far as it should. So it's kind of interesting when we talk about hunting for that. This is a Christmas tree. This is in downtown Jericho area. Christmas trees, even though we're talking about an area that's part Christian, part Jewish, part Muslim, part of probably lots of other religions, but Christmas trees are limited.
And in the Christmas trees are a sign of Christians and Christian beliefs. They're not welcomed. They're not welcome structures.
No, our tour guide talks about Christians are fairly, maybe
In the minority.
are in the minority and are definitely persecuted to a bit by the Jewish and Muslim religions. Those two religious groups can agree together that Christians should not own much of the property. And a lot of property that were Christian properties are no longer Christian properties. But anyway, this tree, our guide talked about, he has a granddaughter who is in a Catholic school in Jerusalem, and they will not allow them to have a Christmas tree in that school. So he decided to take a tree in, and I think it was made out of rebar, because this one is, and took it in, smuggled it in at 2 a.m. in the morning so no guard would see him, and took it in so the kids could have a tree to celebrate Christmas with. But he says if we took it in the daylight, they would take it. So it's kind of interesting to see that process, or that kind of background to what goes in that area. But this is the looking at the Jericho.
The next thing you'll see here is a picture of the Jordan River. Now, do you see that buoy strip right there goes through the middle? That separates Jordan from Israel. That's the border. You're actually looking across the border here into Jordan at this picture right here. The Jordan River is just, what can you say? I mean, it's very muddy, not very appetizing looking. I mean, going in it, I mean, you wouldn't, but there were people doing full immersion baptisms in that river when we were there. But again, it's kind of it's different than what you'd think it would be. You know, it just is.
And there are armed guards in both places. If you look over on the other side, there are armed guards sitting on the Jordan side, and there are armed guards on the Israel side. And there's signs saying, don't get off the sidewalks because there are mines. We are now in Quorum. The Dead Sea Scrolls were found here. You see those holes in there? That is where the Dead Sea
Those
Scrolls
caves.
were hidden. They were there for over 2,000 years, and they were found in, I think, was it 49?
1949. I think that's what it was.
And it
I'm not
was
sure.
a shepherd's boy was out with his flock, and he threw a rock, and the rock didn't bounce, and so he went to see. And what he did was he found where the scrolls had been hidden all these years, and they were in big pots, pottery pots, wrapped up and held in this cave for all that period of time.
And they were so well preserved because it's such an arid, dry area that almost no humidity at all.
And at this point, when we were there, it was probably 80 or 90 degrees, but it can get as hot as 136 at the site. And if you see how barren it is, this is what Israel looks like for the majority, unless they have water. And you can imagine there's supposedly sheep out there that can live. It's surprising how dry and how barren the area is.
I might add too, the Dead Sea Scrolls are in the Jerusalem Museum. There's a museum there.
Parts of
them in the museum. You can actually see part of what they have recovered there.
We need to speed up.
Okay. Next area is Aaron Kieran. We walked up the hill to what's known as St. John the Baptist Church, built around the 5th century, the Franciscan monastery, believed to be been the birthplace and the home of Elizabeth and Zachary. You enter the church through a side altar and a hallway, and there's stairs going down a crypt again. And there are paintings that show the baptism of Jesus, which we found quite interesting. And
this is the walkway up to the Church of the Annunciation. We've been there twice. Once it was really, really hot, and the first time it was pouring rain. And you look at how steep that is in the pouring rain or the super hot. It was not a good walk, but it was beautiful when you get up there. But the Church of the Annunciation is where Mary told Elizabeth Elizabeth and Mary conversed about their pregnancies. And the pictures, I can take her into the next one. Look at this paintings. They're phenomenal. This is in the back of the church of one of the buildings, but it's one of the most beautiful paintings I've ever seen of Mary holding Jesus and standing on the moon or the world, whichever, I'm not sure. But it's a beautiful place. And they have there's 2 different churches in this one area, or parts of the altars. But they're so beautiful, and it's a beautiful place to go to visit and see, but it's a mean walk. Talking about mean walks. This is walking down here. This is the walk that is called the Palm Sunday walk, where they took the palms and Jesus walked down, and he would gone through this area. And this is the angles and the street, and probably maybe the same road. Roads don't change there much. It's just, because the land is so small.
in this same photo, if you look, see that golden dome right there? That's referred to as a Temple Mount, a very, very holy place for the Jews and the Muslims. It's a place, it's supposedly built over the place where Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac. So again, a very, very beautiful place and a very sacred place, especially for those 2 religions. Here to the right, in this photo, you see a mocked up city of the old city of Jerusalem with the wall around it. It's real interesting. When we were there, there were any number of people tourists looking at that. Again, it's a replica of what's actually in the old city.
This is Paternoster, and it looks down out. This, if you can see through, look on through, you can see it shows the whole old town, the whole Jerusalem, old Jerusalem through this window. It's one of the most prettiest sites that we found. It's located on the Mount of Olives, and the church was probably believed to be built by Emperor Constantine and his mother Helena in the 4th century. It's a teardrop shape. But you look at this and say in the 2nd century, yet this is the view. How did they know? But it hasn't changed since then. And they have the Our Father, and I think in 126 languages all around the outer area.
What we're looking at now is a picture of the Garden of Gethsemane, and you see those huge olive trees. This is a very, very peaceful setting, very, very peaceful, very quiet. It has a fence all the way around it. You can't really go into the middle of the Garden of Gethsemane, but you do get kind of a feel for the peacefulness that was there, when, of course, and get some sense of what it was like when Jesus prayed there right before he was to be sentenced.
They have carbon dated some of these olive trees back to 1200 AD. I mean, think about the time frame of that. Next, this is the Rock of Agony where Jesus prayed at prior to being arrested. It's inside of a church that's been put over it. And it's called the Church of All Nations, and 26 countries put the monies together to build the church to protect it. Prior to that, there was in the previous 2 other ancient churches there, one in the 4th century in the Byzantine era time frame, and another was put up by the Crusaders around 1345 AD. Okay, this is the walls entering into the old city, into Jerusalem. If you look at it above there, you're going to see a lion carved in, and this is the Lion's Gate.
There are 8 gates that go into the old city of Jerusalem. And if you can look at this one, you get some sense of how narrow they all are. Very, very narrow. If you're trying to walk through and you've got a truck coming in, you really have to squeeze over the side as far as you can, because again, it's a busy place, lots of people, lots of trucks, lots of things going on. But again, it gives you some sense of the width of that type of those gates.
And how wide, deep they are.
Yeah. Okay. Now one of the areas in the old city is called Via della Rosa, or the Way of the Cross. The Way of the Cross remembers the various steps that Jesus took in carrying his cross to Golgotha. Now, this is sort of the beginning of it. And you see, if you look ahead, look into that, you see there's a lot of merchants along the way. There's a lot of people. It's a very, very busy area. We thought it would be, again, a misconception. We thought it'd be kind of a reverent, sort of quiet area. No, not at all. A lot of people peddling their wares as you go.
That was a surprise us the first time.
It's
It's like you thought it'd be a nice, peaceful, respectful place. No, it's not. And these are just 2 of the ideas when you do the walk of the Way of the Cross. Unless you really know where you're going, you don't know that you're going past them. Because like those are 2 of the different crosses. This one here is number 7, and then one with the pillar is number 10. And they're just into the walls of people build around them, churches have built over them. It's kind of an interesting that you don't really know where you're going. And part of it is owned by all kinds of different religions. Like the first stop is a Muslim school. The second one is a Jewish area. So it's like you walk through, even though it's all holy and they all respect it, it's hard to identify it. And each religion has their little segment of the part. On the one on the pillar and the cross with the black X on, that is where Jesus fell the third time.
Yeah. Then all of this then will lead up to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Now, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is a very religious, very holy place because it's built over Golgotha, where Jesus was crucified, and also his burial tomb. Those are all contained within this very large church. And it's commemorated right here with the paintings that we and the figures that we have. The actual Golgotha, where the cross was, where Jesus actually was crucified, it's under an altar. You have to crawl under the altar, and you can put your hand all the way down to your elbow to maybe touch the very base of where the cross was.
Where the rock is.
Where the rock is, where the cross was positioned. Then
you wait in line to do it.
You wait in a long line to do it.
But it's worth the wait. But the depth you have to get down to touch it is unreal.
Mm-hmm.
Our group struggled. One little old man, he was 85 and he had his three grown sons with him, and they got him in position and he laid flat down so he could touch that. And you say that over and over, that people want to make that contact.
Yeah.
But it's not an easy place to go or make contact.
The other thing you'll see right here on to the right is the actual tomb, Jesus's tomb. It's a very small space. Now, when we were there, the Greek Orthodox monks stopped everyone from going in because it was time to go in to do incensing the blessed incense that they were using. And when that part was over, they let us go in, but they said, hurry up, get in, get out. We want you, want you in and out. We'll move these people along. No pictures. So the pictures of the outside, not of the inside of the tomb area. The tomb area is very, very small. I mean, maybe 3 people can fit comfortably. There are times I think they squeeze 6 of us in for a very, very short period of time. All you can do is say a short prayer, maybe touch the stone there, and then exit so other people could get in.
This is another day. And do we want to just kind of go ahead because we're running out of time? Kind of flash through these.
Okay. This is a picture of the Dead Sea. Now, one of the things we were allowed to do is bring a swimming suit along. There's a place to change. And you could actually get in that Dead Sea. And sure enough, you put your arms and legs up and you float because it's got a high concentration of salt in the water.
It's very slimy.
It is slimy feeling.
You kind of slide in and you slide out and you hope you get out.
Yeah.
Now, we were also fortunate, this is rare, that the owner of the tour group we went with,
Yes.
Holy Land Travel, has parents who live in Israel. And so we went into the home of his parents.
We were invited in as guests.
And so this is a more modern Israel home that we were in. You can see they still have some of the ornateness, the golds, silver things that they decorate with. But they hosted us for a tea, and they served us like some cookies and some baklava and kumquats, fresh kumquats off their tree that were so yummy. But it was just a wonderful experience that we actually got to go into a home of a Christian Catholic home there in Israel.
Finally, there was a Benedictine abbey, Abagash. It's you see what we want to point out here is these faded mosaics on the walls. It's a very, very old structure.
It was built around 1145.
And yet you can still kind of see the mosaics and the paintings shining through. In the basement of this and you see some other artwork here as well in there in the old stones. And in going way, way down into their basement, there actually is a cistern with filled up with water. I mean, they use for the water supply.
See how deep those walls are.
Yeah.
And they're saying the walls of this crypt is about 11 to 12 foot deep. I mean, it's going to stay. I mean, it's been there since 1145, but it's kind of interesting to think about when you walk past these things or through them, what you're going through. And they think at one time, there might have even the Ark of Covenant may have been in that area. It's a very beautiful area. It's well landscaped. If they have water, they have beautiful landscape. They don't have water, you saw like we saw out in the desert. Go ahead. It's just us when we go.
Yeah, it's just us. We get past.
This is
There's one-
interesting. There was a tour of the showing the
The Shroud of
Shroud of
Turin.
Turin. What they've done, and I know you're all probably somewhat familiar with the Shroud of Turin, but what they took those implants and they've now with 3D and all kinds of new high tech things have been able to kind of figure out what that body looked like off of it. And what they thought, Jesus probably did not have a crown of thorns, that he probably had a helmet of thorns. And there are a lot of thorn marks in the upper part of his head. And this is their best idea of what it would have looked like that he was crowned with.
I should say the Shroud of Turin, it's no one knows for sure that it actually covered Jesus's body. They think it probably did, but there's no way of for sure saying that it did. But what they've created here using that shroud was a model of what that body would have looked like after it had been scourged. And they created that here in this display area. And you can't see that very closely, but my God, the way the skin was torn with these whips, because these whips, which we show right here,
Was what they think they were feeding. Some had round balls on them, but you see those white things, and they're bones of animals that, like, they tied on that to make a hook and to tear the skin when they would do the beatings.
Finally, we get to again the weeping wall. This is a high security area. You go through a number of Israeli security people with AK-47s, and finally you get to the wall. Now the wall itself is the areas that you can go to. There's an area for women and an area for men. For the men, you have to have your head covered, and the women are separated from the men. I think this is the women's area right here.
And it's only outside. There's no inside for the women.
And of course, what they are doing is they're praying at the wall, and they have little prayers that they've written in pieces of paper they stuff between the cracks of the stones. Here's a picture I took of a Jewish rabbi praying in the inner area. They didn't mind you taking pictures, which was nice. So we took a few pictures just to get an idea to bring back. And here are some more pictures along the same area. And finally, the last meal we had was in a place called Shepherd's Valley. It was going to be an outdoor meal. It was cold that night. This was February. This is the first time we were there. It was February. It was cold. But we sat in this tent. They had some warming things. Grills that were helped to keep us warm. And then finally, we were on our way home. This is a picture of the Alps as we were flying back home. I might add, we had some interesting things that happened to us on the way home. We flew from Tel Aviv to Charles de Gaulle Airport, and then got on the plane and flew to Atlanta, where we were going to catch the last flight to Kansas City. Well, the flight was delayed. Our flight was delayed in getting in, so the flight we were supposed to take was gone. So we were put up for the night, and it was quite a hassle to do it, but it all worked out. And I'd say all in all, it was a great trip, a great experience. We saw some wonderful things, and that's why we went back the second time.
Any questions that y'all have? Yeah. Well, there's so much, and we got rid of so much trying to get the best parts in for you all.
Your slides are beautiful, and I love that you connected the history and the geography. And I've never heard that saying before, but I'd like to get a copy of it. I didn't quite remember it all.
Oh, history without geography wandereth like a vagrant. And so, so I go way, this is way back. This is a college history course, mind you. And the professor said, we were all young kids, 18, 19-year-olds, and starting out and taking history classes. He said, since you haven't been anywhere, I want you, the assignment we had was to have maps that we actually had to color and color in places that we were studying about. And that was the way we got started. But it comes back to my mind because we actually went to the Holy Land. It is so true. When you read, especially for those of us who are Christians, we read the Bible, you read about all these places and the miracles that happened, and to actually be there and touch these spaces, these places, and follow in the footsteps of Jesus, it was very striking.
It
Very
totally
memorable.
brings your Bible alive.
Yeah.
One of the things that one of our guides talked about, and we didn't mention, but I want to just do it real quick, is that Israel has always had a lot of conflict, and we all know that. And part of it is where Israel is at, almost all the world has to go through there at some point, whether you're from Europe going south, or you're going from Africa north, or China down. All roads, all people have to go through that small area. And it's all like, I mean, it's been occupied by the Persians, the Romans, it's Byzantine times, the Crusaders. The list goes on of who's come in and taken it over. And so that's what makes it all kind of fluid and interesting. And the claims to space and places is unreal. Even in the Holy Scepter Church, there's different parts that belong by different religious groups. And there's just a battle over who gets to go where.
Different Christian sects, own different parts of the church. And
That was kind of what we did not anticipate. Any other questions?
I had several questions. I put in the chat, what tour group did you go with?
We've gone on two
We've
different
gone-
ones.
Which
one
ones
was
were?
first one was a Holy Land travel tour group. We went with a priest from Good Shepherd Catholic Church in Shawnee.
And they're out of Omaha and Arizona, but their home base is Israel. That's where the house we went
The
through.
second group we went through was with School of Faith with Mike Schuslick. And that
Here in
one
Kansas
here in
City.
the Kansas City area.
And I would say that would, if you guys want to, whether you're Catholic or not, that would be probably the best trip to take. They do the best job of
Organizing
especially, but
Yeah.
bringing history, religion, geography, and time together.
it.
And that's the School of Faith.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Holy Family School of Faith is what it is, out of Overland Park.
Yeah, it's excellent. They're there right now. I'd like to go again, but I don't have no money.
Another question is, you would refer to an earthquake. What year was that earthquake? Was that?
Oh,
long time-
it shakes all the time there.
Okay, so it
They
was
have lots of earthquakes.
okay.
It's unstable ground.
All right. And then you said you were in the Shepherd's Field. Were you in Bethlehem? You mentioned Jerusalem, but I was in
Yes,
the
we were.
Shepherd's
Well,
Field.
they're
in
all like, it's like going from Overland Park to Shawnee. They're
Yeah,
all
but were
blended
you-
together.
Were you in
No.
Bethlehem at all?
We stayed in Bethlehem
Yeah.
on the first trip.
Okay. 'Cause
And,
I-
and that's interesting to say because we stayed in Bethlehem, and Bethlehem is a Christian town. In order to go in and out of Bethlehem every day, we had to go through Israeli security. And anytime we could have been asked to exit the bus and show all of our passports and stuff. So we always had to have passports with us because it was a checkpoint Charlie type of thing. When we were the next trip, we were not staying in Bethlehem, so we did not have to go through the security stuff.
Okay. And then you mentioned the church that, did you walk through the Kidron Valley?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And that's like we were the steps that you were talking about? Was that?
That was the Palm Sunday walk down to the Kidron Valley. Kidron Valley is down below that. In
Uh-huh.
that one picture we had, outside of that window, you can go back to that. That would be the Kidron Valley. That's what's below it.
Right, and those steps were coming out of the Kidron Valley, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so are they not allowed to go through there anymore, or how do you get
No,
out of?
it's open.
No, it's open.
Okay, because I did that and I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, it's still open.
And then, yeah, that, and then there was where you mentioned those columns, was that in Capernaum?
No, the columns, yes, it was in Capernaum. It was
Okay.
the site of the old temple.
Right, did you go to Magdala?
Yes.
Yep.
On our
Yeah.
second trip.
That was wonderful, yeah.
Magdala, I don't know if y'all know about it. I didn't know about it. But it's where we spent our last night on the last trip. Magdala is a settlement that goes back to the time of Jesus. And they're just beginning to dig it. And the architectural dig is part of this hotel. And you can look from the hotel out into the dig site. And then you can go out. We went on a tour. It was late at night when we went on the tour by the time we got in. And it's phenomenal what they're finding there that is buried under all this debris for years. And you'll find stepping stones and whatever. And it's just like stepping back in time. And it's not developed. So it's just the raw dig. So it's really interesting. Is that what you felt with it too?
Yeah, I was there in 2016. They said they found it in 2009. I'm sure since then they have built a little bit more because it was pretty sparse. You know, we were able to go there and see them actually digging and doing
Yeah.
different.
And that's
things.
kind of still, it's not
It's still
developed.
going on. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
not like a highly developed place. I mean, you feel like you're really there.
Mhm.
A museum.
Yeah, it was really neat.
You
Yeah.
had another question.
Yeah, you mentioned the weather and you were there twice. This was the first time it was in the winter.
It was
And the
February.
second time when you talked about 110, it was in the summer.
Don't go in June.
You're not going.
Go
Anita?
in February, March,
But Anita, did you
November.
remember the picture of us in the Dead Sea? That was in February. In the Dead Sea area, it was probably 80 so degrees when we were down in that area because it's a lot hotter.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I went in February as well, and our church always takes people in February, and we went to the Dead Sea. It was really neat. And Masada, you went there too, right?
So,
Masada?
yes, I think we did.
So,
Yeah, I think so.
not sure on that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And both of our trips were different. There's some places we went both places, but then each trip had somewhere else we didn't go. So we saw different things that we would never seen.
Did you hear about Hezekiah's tunnel? Did you walk through that at all?
No,
No?
I did not, but I saw a picture from one of my friends that went on a tour, and it's got water running through it, and you are actually walking through the water when you're going through Hezekiah's tunnel.
nope, didn't do
No, we
that
didn't
one.
do that.
it's a minor point, but at the very beginning, you were talking about one of the original churches that you talked about. And it had 14, it started with 14 points. Did
Yeah.
that have any special significance?
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember exactly the 14
Oh,
points.
why it's
Do you?
14 points?
That was-
I don't remember the reason for that, but I do know that that is supposed to be actual birthplace of Jesus.
Yeah, I remember you said that.
There's
But
a
I don't
reason
know-
for it. I don't think I
I
wrote it down.
don't think we haven't written that down. No, I don't
That's
know.
all right.
Something worth looking up. Yeah.
There's a logic to it. Let me see.
I think you put your trip together incredibly well, your trips. You know, I'm thinking, but I've never been there. You saw so much.
Oh, we did.
Oh, yeah.
Two different trips.
And their days are long. I mean, we were out of and on the road 7:30, 8 o'clock every morning.
But then one thing I should mention, we went with a group of what, 40-ish people? And that's helpful too. I mean, you kind of bond with those people and you have a lot of great discussions as you go. A lot of discussion comes as you go through this as a group with a group.
And both
Did
of our groups have re-met.
Yeah.
Did you go to Samaria?
Don't think so.
I don't think we did.
Okay, they don't take a lot of people there, but that is a very interesting place. Did you go to Nazareth?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was.
We
really-
were in Nazareth. We even stayed in Nazareth on one of the trips.
Mhm.
Okay. Did you get baptized in the Jordan?
No,
No.
it's too dirty.
Well,
We got holy water though. I have holy water in a cup or a glass
there's
or
two places.
water
There's
bottle
one
at
on the
home.
north
but
part of the-
Never use.
there's one on the north part of the Jordan, and there's one on the south part of the Jordan River. And we went and, a lot of people, I got, rebaptized down there in the southern part, but yeah, it was really cool.
Was it?
And some groups came prepared to baptize. They
Yeah.
came with white garbs.
They
to put
did.
over their clothes.
Yeah, they did. And some
They-
did.
They
Some were-
provide,
Too
they
white to come back out
provided-
though. It was interesting, but it's a very agricultural river. It's the only water supply they basically have.
Hmm.
But they were great trips. If you ever get the chance, go.
Go back.
Yeah, we went twice. When we came back from the first one, we said to each other, we got to do that again. There's just so much our heads were swimming. And then COVID hit, and then the Church of Faith was
School
School of Faith
of
was
Faith.
offering it, and we looked at each other and said, we're going. And we signed up, and we were gone within 6 weeks because it's just they lived to the guidelines.
Yeah, and I also felt safe when I was there. There was one time in Jerusalem, and I think we heard there was some disturbance at the Damascus gate, and they told us, they said, if you get lost, ask where the Damascus gate is and go in the opposite direction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did have one of our guys got pickpocketed. He
It-
lost
well,
his-
that was in the museum.
It was in the Jewish Museum that he got pickpocketed. But we got to see the
The
U.S. Consul and Embassy because of that.
Because of that.
But any other questions? But if you get the chance, it's worth the trip of your life.
Right.
We've traveled a lot. There's no place we've ever gone back to twice overseas. Well, thank you guys for
Well, thanks so
listening.
much for setting this up, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good questions. Appreciate your contribution.